The Miami Hurricanes just barely survived that upset bug that everyone else in the top 10 seemed to catch. And is SMU now cemented as a top 3 team in the conference?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers. And college football, by the way, is the greatest sport on planet Earth. I mean, this weekend was pure chaos. Obviously not just in the ACC, because there were crazy upsets outside the ACC, but I am so proud to be a college football fan. I am Alex Dono. He's Kenton Gibbs here on Locked On ACC. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making us your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. We will talk about Clemson getting a win. Not quite as much of a blowout as Kenton and I thought. Has Florida State found their quarterback? Because it was a lot better on Saturday in that regard than it's been in previous weeks for them. SMU gets a massive, massive win on the road against Louisville. We'll talk about where the Mustangs now sit in the ACC hierarchy. There are plenty of other games to get to, but we find ourselves, Kenton, again, in the same territory we were in last week. I don't know how Miami keeps doing this. Every time you think, okay, this is the bad Cam Ward game, or their defense cannot stop anybody. Miami at Cal, they were down 25 points midway through the third quarter. They were down 20 points in the fourth quarter. I think their ESPN win probability was around 3%, 2% at the lowest. Like, I don't know how they end up. I mean, I do know, we'll talk about it, but how they end up winning that game 39-38, I'm still astounded by it.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. They're the more talented team, number one. But number two, I want everybody to be clear about this. Last week, I was very adamant. That was not the refs that cost Virginia Tech that game. That was their dumb decisions. This one, the referees absolutely took that game away from Cal. The referees 1,000% took that game away from Cal in a multitude of ways. And the sad part is, I'm not a person who believes in conspiracy theories and secret cabals of like, hey, we're coordinating to make sure that our star, the gifted child of the group, has to win. It's just referees being inept. And what do I mean by that, right? There were multiple calls in that game that were atrocious. The Jay Knott touchdown, where they didn't even review it, even though all scoring plays and turnovers are supposed to be reviewed, and he was out by a mile. What are we doing there?
But that one went against Miami, though. That
one went against Miami, and that's why I said I don't believe there's a conspiracy. I just believe that there are terrible refs, and in this instance, the terrible refs definitely benefited Miami, because we look at the no targeting that was there. Again, I have said this a million times. The rule for targeting should be changed, but while it is in place, enforce it as it is written. You are not enforcing it as it is written if everybody named mama, including the two people that are calling the game, are saying, oh, that's 100% targeting, and it's a shame that the game ends this way. I looked at it and said, oh, man, I'm a defender, and I tell people all the time, hey, the rule needs to be changed. When I saw that hit, I said the same thing with a slightly different thing than I did when I saw the Grayson McCall hit, only because Grayson McCall was out cold after his. But I said the same thing in the recap of it, in terms of that needs to be changed because offensive players need to stop lowering their heads. But also, as it is written now, both the McCall hit and the Mendoza hit were targeting. And both turned out to be determining factors in those games. And then on the touchdown, a legal man downfield. And again, this is why I say
hold
ACC
on.
refs.
A legal man downfield on an RPO, which is so muddy to me. Also, because I see the screenshots of a legal man downfield. That same screenshot shows Cam Ward's face mask being absolutely mauled, which is also a penalty on that play.
And that's what I mean by these refs are terrible. These refs are being terrible. It just so happens to be because if that targeting gets called, Miami doesn't get the ball back. There is no drive to have Cam in that position to get mauled if you call that targeting, because that's what the rule says. And mind you, I want everybody hearing this to know, I am not saying, oh, a legal man downfield didn't get called because it was Miami, because in a much less important game to the ACC, in Raleigh, there was a running back screen called by Wake Forest where the back is 2 yards ahead of the line of scrimmage, and every offensive lineman is 6 to 7 yards in front of the line of scrimmage. Luckily, it was an incompletion, but not a damn flag was thrown. So I look at a lot of these things, and I say to myself, I don't believe there's a conspiracy for Miami. The last game, I think that it was very much so wishy-washy up and down. These officials are just bad. This game, I believe the officials are bad, and Miami was definitely the beneficiary of a call that changed the entire trajectory of this game. And I don't want to hear, well, don't leave it up to the officials. Don't blow a lead. Let me explain.
They blew a 25-point lead. Like they
made
their
bet. The point of the game is not to be so good as to not make mistakes that give the other team an opportunity to win it. The point of the game, 1 point better than the other team. Don't let the people in Vegas hear me say that, but be 1 point better than the other team. And Cal did what they were supposed to do to accomplish that goal. It just did not happen, which again, credit to Miami. Hats off to Miami for making it happen. Hats off to them for taking advantage of the busted coverage. Shame on you, Cal, slap on the wrist for busting a damn coverage on the last drive of the game where you could have easily made this, hey, if we got to make them drive down slowly but surely, little by little, we'll be all right. But instead, you gave up, what was it, a 60, 70-yarder to of all players.
77 yards.
Two of all players from Miami, Xavier damn Restrepo, of all the players that you could say, oh, we're going to forget that guy. Him? Yeah. So I am not saying Cal did nothing to deserve to be in that spot. I am not saying Miami did not make plays to get in a position to win this game, but I am saying definitively there were multiple calls at the tail end of that game that were so bad. And again, this is a problem that extends beyond this game, and that's why I'm not saying, oh, I'm watching it, it's rigged for Miami. ACC refs need to get on their Zoom, get on your P's and Q's, get the hell better, because week after week we're watching games be majorly impacted by mistakes that the refs are making. And I'm sick of it, regardless of who the beneficiary or the team hurt by it is.
I mean, I disagree with you on some things, but I think we both agree that the targeting rule, the way that it is enforced and the way that it's so open to interpretation, it's pretty terrible. Like they need to find a way to refine this. And I know the goal is to try to protect players because like I disagree with that being clear targeting, because it was one of those big physical football hits that, like, just based on what we're used to seeing targeting flags get thrown for, when you see it in live time, you're like, oh yeah, that looks like targeting. But I mean, I watched that replay like the freaking Zapruder film 1,000 times, and yes, the targeting rule is very, very subjective, which is another part of the problem. But you can definitely, you can justify the idea that it was shoulder pad to shoulder pad. It was hard to really determine for sure helmet to helmet contact. Now, in fact, Kenton, I have looked up the definition in the NCAA rulebook of what they consider targeting, and I feel like the definition in itself is problematic and it's way too subjective. So here's the definition. In college football, targeting is when a player initiates forcible contact with an opposing player that goes beyond a legal tackle or block or playing the ball. What kind of a definition is that? Like, what kind of, and they give examples of what might be targeting. Some examples of targeting include launching into an opponent with a hit to the head or neck. And again, I think you could argue on that Wesley Basaint hit that it was shoulder. Using the crown of the helmet to strike an opponent. It wasn't that for sure. Forcibly hitting a defenseless player in the head or neck area, leaving their feet to launch themselves into an opponent. I think that there was some launching going on. Crouching before making a tackle to create maximum force. But those are examples of what might be targeting. The actual definition of targeting is very vague.
Yeah, and this is for me personally, number one, there needs to be exceptions for when an offensive player changes the level of their helmet in a meaningful enough way to influence what the optics of that play are. Number one. Number two, Dono, you know I love you, but I don't think anybody outside of the 305 area code or who is not wearing green and orange looks at that play and is like, is that targeting? Because we have seen targeting called for much less. Less.
But again, that's part of the problem. Like, we don't know what's targeting.
I agree. And I look at this and I say to myself, I don't want games to end in that way. So let me make that clear. I don't want any game to end in that way. However, I'm a firm believer. I'm not one of those guys that believes like the whistle in basketball should be different in the playoffs or in the tournament than it is in the regular season. I'm not a guy who believes that, what is targeting should be different in a week 3 game between two different Division III teams and between, 2 playoff teams in the CFB. I don't believe that in the CFP. I don't believe that. I believe that if the call is the call, then it is the call every time. Mm-hmm. And so the subjectivity of this is what I struggle with, because that exact same refereeing crew called 4 targetings in the last game they called together. And those 4 targetings, some of them were more egregious than that one. There were some that were definitely like, oh, I'm not sure. That's a little tougher. So to see that one not called targeting, when again, I'm not saying that the announcers have the end-all be-all. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
you're going to take Brock Osweiler's word over mine. Brock Osweiler? Seriously?
Dono, listen, Dono, I love it. I love it. And anybody who knows me knows I like the Miami Hurricanes a lot. I am shocked every time I find out that they don't have an ACC championship. That is literally like a very baffling stat to me. But with that in mind, I'm a believer in the rules have to be the rules for everybody. The rules have to be the rules for Miami, the same way they have to be for NC State, the same way they have to be for Wake Forest, the same way they have to be for Virginia Tech, same way they got to be for everybody. And I struggle with seeing that hit where, yes, you can argue that the forearm is what initiated that, but I don't think that there is any doubt in anybody's mind. Did the crown of the helmet make contact with his helmet? I don't think there's any doubt in my mind.
It did. The whole time you've been talking, I've been listening to you, but the whole time you've been talking, I'm watching this replay of it on loop, and I can still justify the idea that it was shoulder pad to shoulder pad. It was a really, really hard hit that made his neck go back a little bit because it was such a hard hit. But it's a violent game, Kenton. I mean, not everything can be targeting.
That's very interesting. I agree. Listen. When I believe it was Drew Brees, he got hit by somebody from the 49ers and they threw a flag on it, even though it was a clean hit. It was just an extremely hard hit. And he said, he hit me so hard, I knew it had to be a penalty. Stuff like that, absolutely saw. And this, just because Mendoza got hit hard, I do not believe it was a penalty just because it was a hard hit. What I saw looked like, the replays that I saw looked like, oh yeah, that's crown of the head, crown of the helmet, made contact with the crown of his helmet. And again, the biggest thing there, the launch and beyond what is needed for a tackle, which, by the way, like you said, Dono, that leaves so much ambiguity because how do we decide what is needed for a tackle? How do we decide? There was a launch. There was the element of, hey, this is beyond what an average tackle would be to the average viewer or average ball knower. But again, I'm looking at this and I'm saying the refs need to be better all around. This is not about Miami. This is not about NC State. This is not about Cal. This is not about Wake Forest. This is not about SMU, Louisville, Clemson, Florida State, whoever. This is not about individual teams. I'm saying the refs need to be better so that we can stop having these damn conversations instead of talking about the ball. Instead of talking about, this is a great game. You and I are sitting here going back and forth about, is it targeted? Is it not targeted? What's going on and all this stuff? And last thing I'll say is this. I'm a firm believer that we need to stop calling things Heisman moments if you put your team in a position to be down anyway. To me, it is not a Heisman moment.
Ward dug him out of it.
It is not a Heisman moment.
21 unanswered points in the final quarter.
I hear you, but to me, it can't be a Heisman moment if you were the reason they were there.
But it was really more. He did throw a pick six, which was ghastly. That was an awful pick six. But most of it was the defense that put him in that. But you know what? I think FanDuel agrees with you because Ward is still in the top 3, but he's behind Ashton Genty and Travis Hunter actually moved in front of Ward for the Heisman odds. But we have and I agree with Kenton. The last thing we want to be talking about is officials. Here we are again. But we're going to continue because we have more games to talk about. Did SMU just become a true bona fide contender in the ACC? We'll get to that and so much more. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not anywhere near done yet. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. My friends, we are only getting started with LinkedIn. Now, some of these top 10 teams that went down, maybe having some LinkedIn profiles getting refreshed right now. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. For your second listen, make sure you check out our other shows. Kenton does an awesome job on Locked On Wolfpack, and that Wolfpack, we got to bring that up before we're done here. I also host Locked On Canes, but before we get to that, another big win for SMU. Now this is bigger. I know that the statement win they got at home against Florida State last week, a lot of people who weren't paying attention to SMU started paying attention, but this is a much bigger win. They go on the road to Louisville as underdogs by about a touchdown, and they beat Louisville 34-27. Louisville loses for the second straight time. They drop out of the top 25. Now, I still think Louisville's a really good team. Like I'm not writing them off. These were a couple of tough losses against good opponents, but Kevin Jennings is so brilliant again at quarterback. I don't even know how this guy hadn't emerged until a couple games into the year. And SMU takes care of business. And I now believe they are cemented as a top 3 team in the ACC.
Well, I can tell you why Kevin Jennings didn't rise earlier, because Preston Stone was an all-conference quarterback that was coming back. You don't bench the guy. Even if the guy behind him is playing well, you don't bench him until he does something benchable, which many people, when they saw Preston Stone earlier this season, they were like, I mean, are we sure that we're going with the other guy this early? Like, he hasn't been perfect, but are we sure? Kevin Jennings said, yes, we're sure. We're very sure, actually. We're all happy. Hey, everybody at the table will have what I'm having because you're on my page now. And he has been masterful through the air, on the ground. He has led that team and done whatever needs to be done to make it happen for that SMU team. And I'll tell you, the biggest thing that I noticed about him that I liked in that Louisville game, decision-making. A lot of people say decision-making in terms of, oh, did he make the play or not, or whatever the case may be. His ability to process, his ability to, hey, right now, and anybody who knows anything about Lashley's offense, you're going to make the reads as a quarterback. It's all on you, more so than most other offenses where, like, there's a one-read RPO situation. No. Lashley doesn't do that a ton. He gives it to you to say, all right, you've got to figure this out. When you see this, you've got to go here. When you see this, you've got to go here. And Kevin Jennings has looked absolutely – he's put on masterclass after masterclass in this performance. And I'm going to say something that may be controversial. Right now, he would be my ACC Player of the Year. He would be my ACC Player of the Year. I have not seen anybody that I would say has had as positive an impact on their team as him. I have not.
Wow. Those are strong words. I mean, I would still, despite the mistakes that he redeems himself for, I would still say Cam Ward until proven otherwise. But I will say it was so impressive. You talk about Jennings getting it done through the air and on the ground, going up against a really stingy Louisville rushing defense.
Absolutely.
Kevin Jennings, 113 rushing yards and a touchdown against that Louisville D. And, we knew it was going to be a little bit difficult for SMU's running backs, but Brashard Smith managed another pretty good game, 52 yards. And SMU put up 190 team rushing yards against Louisville. I mean, this is impressive stuff here. Now, all right, what happened? What happened to your Wolfpack? How did you, for as troubling as things had been, I still thought y'all would beat Wake Forest.
I did too, but on Locked On Wolfpack, I specifically said no outcome would surprise me in this game except Wake Forest blowing out NC State. That was the only outcome that would surprise me, because I realized that there was a disjointedness at the end of last game that I didn't like at all. There was just something there where you could feel the vibes were very much so off with this team, and that continues to be the case, right? Obviously, everybody will want to point at Cedric Bailey in the last offensive play for the Wolfpack, that really bad interception. He made a good decision. He just missed. But that's why I tell people, you don't want to start a freshman, because freshmen are going to be inconsistent regardless of how talented they are, right? Look at Bama and their freshmen and how they performed last week to this week. And Ryan Williams is still great. The corner, and a little different, right? So that's what you get when you count on guys who are slow dancing at prime a year ago, or less than a year ago, rather, just a few months ago, to be the leaders and to play meaningful snaps. That team is an uncanny valley of a good team. And what I mean by that is, the uncanny valley theory, that like if you see something that's humanoid, it's not quite human, but it's
always
close.
A little off.
Exactly. It's something that you're like, oh, what's going on? NC State is that. You look at this team and the wide receivers, the pass catchers, consistently open, consistently making plays. And yet we just go away from the guys who are doing it. And let me also give credit to Wake Forest, because instead of playing to not lose the game, Dave Clawson and company played the game to win. And that's what happened. Dave Doran has learned nothing over his 12 years in terms of whether or not to be conservative when you have a big lead. How under God's green earth do you see an 8-man box defensively when you have 3 receivers on the field and you say, I'm still going to run the ball? Yeah. Brother, the count. You literally cannot account for every defender they have, even if your quarterback pulls it. Like, what are we doing here? So, I look at this situation and I say, it reminds me of the Boston College game a few years ago, where it's NC State senior night, and you end up ruining that senior night because you were in I believe it was a 14 or 13 game home win streak for NC State. You end up ruining that because you thought, oh, we're just going to sit on the ball and we're just going to sit on it out and we're just going to, 2 runs and some feckless pass and kick. It never works. You have to play to win the game. When an opponent is down, you have to stomp on their hopes. Then NC State did not do that. Wake Forest capitalized. Wake Forest converts on 4th and 9. Wake Forest converts on 4th and 3. Wake Forest shows up and they expose NC State's shaky tackling once again. Because again, NC State has 1 or 2 plays a game where everybody on defense does it right except one guy. And then Tony Gibson's attacking 3-3-5 defense. If one guy misses, that's all it takes, because everybody else is generally up at the line of scrimmage filling another hole. So it's a very disappointing showing by NC State. Credit to Wake Forest. That is their first win against an FBS team all season. And NC State deserved it. They deserved that loss. They earned that loss. And Wake Forest took the game from them. So I don't want to make this about, just NC State sucked and that's what bad. No, Wake Forest took the game from them.
Absolutely. No doubt. Well, I want to talk about some other surprising results, including, like, they lost, but Florida State is probably in a better quarterback situation. I thought they played probably better than they have all season, to be honest, in their loss to Clemson. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked on ACC. Oh, we're certainly not done yet with the Game Time app. This is the only ticket app that Kenton and I use. We're getting the best deals, including last minute, not just sporting events, guys, concerts, musical theater, comedy shows. You can find everything you need on the Game Time ticket app. Game Time even has a new feature called Game Time Picks. Makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love how on the Game Time app, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Guys, make sure when you use the all-in pricing feature on Game Time, I highly recommend, you're going to see the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and most importantly, use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Oh, it's game time. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. So, Kenton, we've only really scratched the surface of the ACC scores. Kudos to Syracuse. That was a big win, 44-41 overtime.
Massive.
against UNLV. UNLV ranked, the Syracuse potentially can help spoil their G5 party. Virginia over Boston College, 24-14. Pittsburgh, they stay unbeaten. They beat North Carolina on the road, 34-24. Eli Holstein, another brilliant performance, 381 yards, 3 touchdowns. I'm expecting him to get probably named ACC Rookie of the Week yet again. Virginia Tech bounced back with a big win on the road at Stanford, 31-7. They get their first conference win. And Georgia Tech, they spoil the undefeated start for the Duke Blue Devils, 24-14. Which of those? I think probably the Georgia Tech win, either Georgia Tech or Syracuse, even though that was a non-conference game. Which of those do you think were like the most impactful for the ACC this year?
Oh, it was definitely Syracuse. Yeah. Even though UNLV is a group of 5 team, you still need to win that game for the conference because our conference has not performed well against G5s this year. I don't know what's going on, but we've looked up and we've said, did Memphis just beat Florida State? Did Louisiana just beat Wake Forest? What's going on here? So we absolutely, as a conference needed that win in terms of, just saying, hey, not only can we beat G5s, which we should do, but we also can beat top 25 teams, which, again, shout out to Syracuse, shout out to Fran Brown. He has done a phenomenal job. I'm a little surprised, and don't get me wrong, personnel-wise, it makes sense that the DBs are the area of concern there. Yeah. It's surprising because Fran Brown's last job was as a DB coach.
Yes.
That's the part that's like, what? That would be like me being the head coach of a team and our D-line is just atrocious. What are we doing? What's happening? 17 years of doing the thing, and now my team isn't doing the thing. But that win is very much so a very quality win because, honestly and truly, UNLV's offense has taken off since Sluka either wasn't paid or demanded more money or whatever the case was with Sluka. Him being gone has been a net positive for this team. So, that squad, and by the way, that squad very well could end up as the G5 squad. If it's not one of the service academies, because both of those are undefeated right now in terms of Army and Navy, who knows there. But they still have a very direct path to be the G5 team that ends up getting a bid because they still have to play Boise State, who is another team that is up for the bid. So, this game could end up meaning a lot more down the road. But even still right now, I believe that it means enough to say, hey, this was the most impactful win for the conference as a whole.
Yeah. So how about it was so weird. I watched Clemson versus Florida State. Clemson ultimately gets the 29-13 win on the road. Like they even covered the spread, but still, like I was actually pretty impressed with Florida State playing with some toughness. They blocked a couple field goal tries in the game. The quarterback play was significantly better with Brock Glenn under center than it was with DJ Uiagalelei, which I think makes a lot of people wonder why it took this long. But like, even though, before the season started, you would say, well, Clemson's not supposed to go into Tallahassee and beat Florida State by 16 points. But the bar has gotten so low for the Seminoles that I came away like really feeling impressed. Like they may be, they're 1-5 now on the year, which is dreadful, but maybe they're rounding into form where they can win a few games before the season is over. But let me ask you this, Kenton, do you think this was a case of maybe Clemson being a little underwhelming because, they had to attempt 7 field goals in this game. They weren't very clinical in the red zone. They played well between the 20s, though. Or was this a matter of Florida State's defense starting to resemble a little bit more what we thought they would before the season started?
Clemson fell asleep at the wheel. Clemson absolutely fell asleep at the wheel in this game. They regressed back to a very stale version of their offense that we had seen in the past, where it's like, oh, I know that play. I know what's coming here. It's that old QB draw power thing that we've seen too many times. I'm telling you right now, you're a better one than me, Donald. You're a nicer person than me, and everybody knows that. Anybody who listens to this show knows you're a much kinder man than me. I walked away from that game thinking, oh, Florida State just wasted one of their best performances of the year on a 16-point loss. Yikes.
Yeah, well, we hear something, and I'll let you finish your point. Something that is still an issue for Florida State. You notice every time they have a decent drive percolating, they have a catastrophically bad snap that goes over the quarterback's head, or just like a really shocking sack that they take at the worst possible time. So the self-destruction gene is absolutely still there for Florida.
And that's why, and I was literally just about to mention that. It's not the fact that they lost by 16. It's the fact that the old habits that made them bad with DJ under center have not changed. They have not changed. And to me, I look at this team and I say, why would I ever be excited that you're only losing by 16 or 17 when you were a top 10 team coming in? And don't get me wrong, I get it. Expectations reset in real time. But when you're suing the conference and saying, hey, you bought in all these bums, we are above this. Why would I ever look at you losing by 16 and go, hey, they're only losing by 16. This is a good team. They're doing a good job.
Yeah.
And listen, you're not wrong to feel that way because I almost felt that way myself at times. I said, well, I'll be damned. They actually – and then I thought about it. What the hell is wrong with you? This is the defending ACC champion, and we're talking about you only being down 2.5 scores at home. Get out of here. No, get somebody else to do it, not me.
Oh, man. Well, listen, I had an awesome time, as I always do, talking ACC football. And, of course, we'll be talking more basketball very soon as well. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Dono from Locked On Canes. Got a fun week of shows coming up. By the way, I want to make sure, I'm pretty sure Lawrence Ross still wants to come back on the show. I was messaging him about it during a time when it looked like Cal was going to cruise. And then and he wants to come back on the show. I haven't confirmed with him after the end of the game that he still wants to come back on the show, but I think he does. So I think
I know Lawrence like I think he does, like I think I do, he'll be back. He will be on this show immediately.
And you know what I'm going to be doing? I've already studied it, but for the next 24 hours before we bring Lawrence on, I am going to study every possible wrinkle in the rule book when it comes to targeting. I'm going to study that. I'm going to bring like photographic evidence with me to prove that Wesley State did not commit targeting. I'm going to have all of that ready because I'm going to need the ammo. Oh, man. And we're going to have the squad coming up later this week as well. You guys want to keep it locked right here for our next episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.